Well, my salt levels are pretty high right now. I had a bunch of notes I took. I think it was like 5 pages worth of notes that I took while I was watching the questions of Kavanaugh, but they're just hashes now. So, thanks, Open Office. That's really great of you. Awesome. I'm just going to be doing this off memory now, basically. So, the things I remember are basically this. From the Democrats, there was a real attempt to paint Kavanaugh as an alcoholic. A lot of them just asked questions, basically the same questions over and over again. Did you drink to the point of blacking out? Did you ever drink and forget where you are, wake up somewhere you didn't recognize? Did you have a drinking problem? This guy, your friend that you used to drink with, he wrote a book about his own big drinking problem, and you were mentioned in his book. And Kavanaugh answered the questions relatively well. He just said, well, yeah, I like beer, who doesn't? So that was one strategy the Democrats had, and it was pretty obvious what they were going for there. They wanted to convince as many people as possible that this guy was just a complete drunk, and that he wasn't to be trusted because of this, and I didn't think they did a very good job. They asked kind of the same questions over again. Another one of the things that they really liked to talk about was how Dr. Ford had been so brave in bringing up these accusations. So brave in not wanting to have her name out there. And to be fair, I kind of agree with Kavanaugh in that she is in some ways a victim of the Democratic Party right now. She didn't want to be out in the open. So to call her brave for that is kind of dumb. But, if she really thinks that this happened to her, and at the same time she has no evidence, what they should have done was talk about this when there wasn't a whole bunch of cameras in the room. They should have done this at the confidential hearing, and they could have had it out and had a pleasant old chat. But what they did instead was they waited until it could be as public as possible, and then they made these accusations of hers known. So she, like Kavanaugh, has been in the media. Her family has been damaged by this, almost certainly, just like his has. And so she is, in many ways, another victim. Kavanaugh has said multiple times he doesn't even think that she's lying at all. He just thinks it's someone else who did this to her. And, okay, we have no reason to believe that this didn't happen, to be fair. We have plenty of reason to believe that it wasn't Brett Kavanaugh at this point, but there's no reason we should assume that she's lying about this. I don't necessarily think that she's lying. I think she's probably quite confused. So she has been being used as a tool, but Cory Booker especially did this, and I thought his questions were just awful. And one of the things that he said was, oh, so you're blaming her. And it was quite clear from what Kavanaugh had said that he was not blaming Dr. Ford, and he was blaming the Democratic senators. But being the piece of slimy shit that Cory Booker is, he did whatever he could to defer this to her. In other words, instead of taking the blame himself, which is what should have happened because he is to blame in many ways, he tried to make it look as though Kavanaugh were blaming her and shifting the guilt or the blame to her, which was just such a slimy move. His questions were about as useless as anyone's. Some of the Democrats actually did have useful questions. Not many, but some. But a lot of them were just the same things over and over again. There was one in particular who I was going to show. I had some clips, the timestamps for clips that I wanted to show, picked out. And she was basically talking to Kavanaugh like he was a small child. I can't remember her name. Hirono, I think was her name was. It was closer to the end, and it was just... the questions were so simple, and she was obviously trying to just lead him into saying something that she could use or could be used by the media. It was really kind of painful to watch. So I guess that's probably one of the reasons Kavanaugh was a little more insistent than I think he should have been on giving full context to every question. It did kind of sound like he was, given a bit of a runaround. I can see why people would say that. During the questions, there was one other thing that Democrats have pointed to as a reason to why he shouldn't be a judge. He was being questioned about his potential alcoholism, and the questioner was someone whose father had been an alcoholic. And when she asked him, "Oh, do you have a drinking problem?" he said, "No, do you?" Not really that bad, but he actually apologized for that. This is, I think, the last one before they took a break, and when they came back from the break, he apologized. So, kind of showing the character from him. The one Republican who I think did what they should have mostly all been doing was Lindsey Graham. I don't really know much about him, but I've heard the name before, but he did... he appealed with emotion. Most of the Republicans were saying, well, like, this is stupid that you're doing this, but, whatever. They didn't really sound that into it. Some of them sounded more into it than others, of course. But Lindsey really did make it very clear he thought what they were doing was absolutely disgusting. And it was, obviously. If you watch that, you'll see. Based on the literally no evidence that Dr. Ford has, this is a pretty disgusting thing to do to someone. And I thought it was great that that's what he did. Lindsey Graham did a great job. I wish more Republicans would be like him, and more conservatives in general. This applies to Canada as well. Andrew Scheer is one of my least favorite politicians right now. He's the leader of the Conservative Party, but at the same time is basically just a closeted socialist. So I don't know. He's someone who says they're conservative and and believes in free market principles. He's really just into those milk cartels. He just loves drinking Canadian milk or something. So yeah, this is definitely a problem with conservatives everywhere. I'd talk about conservatives in Europe, but there really aren't that many. There's about 10, so I don't need to bash them. They get plenty of that already. So I think that, man, that's so disappointing. I spent like 2.5 hours getting notes for this already. That was pretty unfortunate. But, I thought that what happened was pretty disgusting. The Democrats' lines of questioning were awful. One thing that the Republicans were good about pointing out was the fact that Dianne Feinstein had these allegations for so long before mentioning them. They mentioned or talked about her having, I think it was like 6 weeks or something. She's had these. So she had at least 4 weeks, a whole month, where she could have talked about this beforehand. Before when she did announce them. But no, that would have been not okay. You can't talk about this when there's more time. Oh yeah, and this is one of the things the Democrats were doing. They're always talking about how there's not enough time. Well, if you'd come forward with these earlier, then there would have been enough time. So really, there's just a Democrat here who's to blame about that. Kavanaugh also he seemed quite upset that he had to wait so long to testify. He said multiple times that he wanted to testify right away to clear his good name, and I can see exactly why, because the longer this accusation was out there without being addressed, the worse it got. Another strategy from the Democrats was to basically get him to ask for an FBI investigation. It was kind of pathetic. And it got to the point where the chairman of the committee just started saying, look, it's not up to him whether there's an investigation. That you can ask for an investigation. You, the senators, can ask for one. He has nothing to do with that process. Stop asking him to do it. But they, of course, didn't. And they kept trying to get him to ask. I guess someone who could have started an investigation was quite near, so a couple of them asked him to turn around and talk to that person. It was a pretty pathetic showing from the Democrats as a whole. Again, there were a couple of them that asked fine questions, but it's hard. I mean, this is like 36 years ago, so like, what do you expect to find? How are you going to find anything from this? No. They also had to be constantly reminded of what the role of the FBI was in these investigations. So basically, the FBI's role is just to take statements. And there was actually a Joe Biden quote that I had written down that they were quoting there. That basically said, if you put any value in an FBI investigation, you don't have any clue what you're talking about, because the FBI is not there to investigate. And for these matters, the FBI is there to collect statements. And they'd already collected all the statements they needed, so shrug. Now, of course, after this, they did get their investigation, which came back with absolutely nothing, which is what everyone expected would happen, but that's Of course, now that there's nothing that came back from the FBI investigation, Democrats are upset about it, saying, "Oh, there wasn't enough of an investigation." Well, if you just brought this up earlier, they could have had probably more of an investigation. But again, you didn't do that, Diane. You sat on it for however many weeks. So this is just your own fault. I mean, you made a bed, now lie in it. Yeah, this is not the video I intended. This is kind of just off the top of my head what I remember. Pretty disappointed that this happened, but live and learn. I think it's because I unplugged my laptop without closing it or something. I don't know. I closed the lid of the laptop and then unplugged it without the battery in, so it lost power. But I'd already saved it, so it auto saved and it just covered everything with hashes. Really, really annoying. Kind of a terrible little thing in there. Programming there, but what are you going to do? I suppose what I'll have to do in the future is make sure that I properly close open Office. Yeah. So thanks. This is, like I said, not the video I planned on, but this is the video we got. I hope that Kavanaugh gets confirmed, because I mean, really, at this point, there's no reason they shouldn't be confirming him. I didn't watch Dr. Ford's testimony. I might do that tomorrow. It's another 4 hours, and that's a long time. I probably spent, I don't know how long I spent. I spent quite a while doing this, so that might not happen, at least not yet. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope that, I hope this was at least somewhat interesting. I was going to hope that it was rather enlightening, but didn't quite get there. Have a good one, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.